going to do a little video about optimizing rendering in PuppyRay. So let's just dive in. Maybe if we have a little time later, we can talk about how we can create some landscape height maps from scratch. But let's just dive into PuppyRay for now. I just want to talk about a few optimizing options to get the most out of it. As you see, we start with preview quality, and global illumination is turned off, and there are some other things we can do to look at here to get the most out of the program. I'm going to click on this little More tab here, which opens up a number of extra options. The first thing we can take a look at is this water plane, and as a rule, not having water is faster than having water. As you can see, that's running probably a bit faster. Then using value noise water is a bit slower. And then finally using the Perlin noise can often be quite a bit slower. As you can see, we really took a hit right there. Alright, so, but on a high-end GPU, that may not be a problem whatsoever. It's probably a matter of memory bandwidth. So those are some of the first things we can do to make this run a little faster. If you don't need water, just turn it off and you'll get a little extra performance. Alright, second up, down here is a thing called the render grid. I currently have it set to 256 by 256, and what this is basically, because GPUs don't multitask, we have to divide this up into smaller rectangles to break the tasks up so that the user still gets access to screen refreshes and that sort of thing on a timely manner. If we had computed the entire screen all at once, that the GPU would have been too busy, and the screen wouldn't get updated, and the user would be sitting there waiting and not seeing anything on the screen. So this basically depends on what kind of GPU you have. If you have a slow GPU or a GPU without a lot of shader cores, you might be better off with a 64 by 64. Not only would it probably be faster, but it'd be also a lot safer because it's taking on smaller workloads. And there is what's called a TDR, which is a timeout, a 2-second timeout. If your GPU runs over 2 seconds, basically the program crashes. Now you can set that to a higher value. That's another video. You can Google that on YouTube or whatever. And basically, there's no one setting here that's the ideal setting. It's whatever works best for you, and it can have a dramatic speed improvement or not. And it just really depends on your hardware which setting is the best. So try them all, see which one works the best, and use that one. That is called the render grid. All right. The next biggest thing we can do here is play with the near clip, and I'll explain that in a moment. But first, I'm going to go to a higher quality, say medium quality, and I'll demonstrate what near clip does. Currently, it's set to 0.33, and this is basically a value that's in units. You'll know units from the level here. A unit is basically, we don't have miles or inches or meters or whatever in Halo. We just have units. A unit is basically the distance from one side of a bitmap to the other, basically. So when we have a default level of 3, that means you'll see typically you'll see this landscape repeat 3 times before everything completely fades in fog. So if you set it up to 5 or 6, you'll see it repeat more and more times. But that's what a unit is. So if you set it to 1, you're basically seeing 1 unit of this landscape. So going back to the near clip, the way PuppyRay works is it doesn't work with geometry, it doesn't work with polygons. It's a ray marcher, which means each ray has a the ray travels along a very small number of steps, or very fine steps, until the ray hits the ground, and then it goes ahead and does the shading and all that stuff. What near clip does is it says, well, don't ray trace or don't ray march below this level. That's not exactly right, and I'll explain that in a moment. Since things further away need less fidelity than things that are nearby, we do not use a fixed size ray step. Instead, the step gets bigger when the ray is further away, and it gets smaller or finer when the ray is closer to the camera. That's so we can see fine details up close with a high precision, and also see things that are far away, and it levels everything out and it looks right. So had we used a fixed step size, things in the distance would look higher fidelity, and things in the foreground would look very blocky and like we were rendering slices, and it just wouldn't look very good. But the downside here is as you near zero, or the zero position of the ray, which is the camera, the step gets so small, so infinitesimal, that processing would take an impossible amount of time, or basically near infinity amount of time. So we add this little clip. It clamps the value. It says below this distance, which, as I said, is currently 0.33. That's 0.33 units. Anything below that distance away from the camera, don't use a smaller step. Just keep it at that value. So if you're not going to be rendering anything close to the camera, set this to 1 or 2 even, and that'll give you a huge speed boost sometimes. If you're going to be rendering close to the camera, you may have to go ahead and set it a little bit closer. As you can see, the fidelity starts to break down a little bit, and you might want to put that on like 0.2 or something similar. You'll see you get more detail up close. But if you're not doing that up close stuff, say you're up in the air somewhere up here like this, just go ahead and set it up to a higher value, 0.7 or something similar. If you're not near the ground, then you're not going to notice it. But as you can tell, it is making a difference here, so maybe you can just fine-tune it to get it just where you want. That 0.5 is working good for where the camera is right now. So those are the 2 or 3 biggest things that change performance in PuppyRay. I'll look at some other things. Now, the ray step itself, we've talked about rays and ray steps and all that. You can set the quality level. It's currently set to 0.01. That means it's going to ray step at unit 1. The ray step is going to be 0.01 in length. Now it gets finer as you get closer to the camera, and it gets coarser as you get further away. But at unit 1, that will be the ray step size. Now we can get more precision if we make this a much finer ray step, and as we see, you render there, you see much higher precision. That'll give you more fidelity, but there is kind of an expense to that, in that you see more flaws, more of these stair steps, because these are only 256 levels of gray here. You'll see more stair stepping and that kind of thing, but that might be desirable. The rocks look kind of nice that way. I mean, for tiers of rocks and stuff, that could be kind of desirable. All right, so use your best judgment there on the ray step. A couple other things that affect performance is the shadow quality. A higher value is actually faster and a lower fidelity shadow, but it's also softer, so that could be desirable. As you see, we can get softer shadows by using that. If you want a really high precision shadow, just go ahead and use the ray step of 1 or the shadow quality of 1. It'll give you a sharp shadow, but it'll be a very precise shadow. And that's entirely up to you if you want to use that or not. And you can see that's already really affecting performance. So I'll go ahead and make that a little higher, and while we're running a little bit faster, and we're getting near to where I think we should be. I might tweak these a little bit. See if we can get by with 0.66. I hardly see a difference there. So that might be that might be an ideal setting right there. Now, one other thing you can do that will often dramatically affect performance is, say we had selected, say, the high quality or the final render. That comes and turns on the anti-aliasing setting for you, and it might be something that really dramatically affects performance. In this case, I think I have it set to 3 anti-aliasing steps. That's not going to affect performance that badly, although you can see it's taking its toll. Had this been 30, that might have taken an extremely long time to render. And as you can see there, it's still going. Okay, that just totally cut performance. So instead of changing all these settings, just come over here and turn off anti-aliasing. And when you're ready to go back and turn it on again, all you have to do is click that one setting, and that will allow you to continue to be interactive with the filter. And I think I'll go ahead and just turn on some texture here, and we're getting pretty close to where we want to render this. Might make a few other changes. I like to use a little more specularity sometimes. Say we're near the water, change that a little bit, and we'll get a little more highlight from the lights. A lot more you can do there. But I won't mess with that for now. I'm not going to use any water this time. Go ahead and close that. Actually, I want to do a final render, and I usually use about 120. 200 will give you a little more noise removal. I'm just going to use 120 for now. I'll turn that off. I'm going to also turn on global illumination. Adjust that to my desired level. I might want to move the light into place in some fashion. And I don't like using a yellow light. I like to make it a little more orange. And I like to use a little more of that space we got there, and maybe choose a sky of a different variety here. And that's about it. Ready to render. I'll just click on anti-aliasing and it starts going. Those are basically some of the ways you can optimize Howler PuppyRay to get more performance and speed out of it. Hope that's been informative. Hope I didn't botch it too bad. Thanks for watching, and talk to you later.